All right, this is Daf Yomi in Motion, number 810. Today we're going to learn Daf Tzadi in Bab Metzia, and we're going to be speaking about Lo Sachsom Shor B'Disha, the love of not muzzling one's animal while it's working with, and the Gemara starts on the bottom of Peites Amid base, last line, Tana Rabbanan. We have a brace that says that paros marchosois bitavua, the paros that are working and they're stamping on kernels of barley, soybean. So what they did, that normal disha, where there was an issa to be lo sachson, is when they take the shibailais, the stalks, together with the little pods of kernels, and then the animal will tread on that and separate the stalks from the kernels will come away from the stalks. But to actually break the seed from within the chaff, that's not the process where there's an isser of lo sachson. So if there, and that's what this is. This is hamarchosois bitavua, is stamping on the kernels to break the seed out from inside the kernels, and not just to separate the stalk from the seed. And the way they do that is they get the seeds out. We're in the bottom of Peites Amid base, last line. The way they do that is they soak these kernels with the chaff and with the klipa, and then they dry it in an oven, and then the animal steps on it and the inner kernel comes out. That there is really no isser of lo sachson. So that's what it says. If someone has the paros, the stepping on those kernels, marchosois b'tavua, or if they're hadoshois b'truma, or if they're doing stam disha, stamping and separating the stalk from the kernels, but it happens to be truma v'maiser. So eno over mishum bal sachson. There's not going to be any lav of bal, because since the animal, it's not really the schayra of trail of the owner. It's really owned by the kahanim, or if it's Meiser Rishon, it's owned by the Levim. So there's not really a problem in that. There's not going to be any lav of lo sachsom. And in the first case, that's when they're breaking the inner kernel from the outer klipa. That's also not a problem of lo sachsom, because that's not what it was originally, where the lav was originally said on. Eino oiver mishum lo sachsom. Hey, Mars Ayin, but what should, because it does look bad, the animal would have a muzzle on it, and it's mamish doing disha. So because of Morris Ayin, maybe bul ma'iso hamin v'soila lo tarskolin shebepia. Rather, they should take a grain that the animal is working with, stepping on, and put it in a feed bag in front of the animal's mouth, and let it eat. Attach it to the in front of its mouth, let it eat from that, and then it won't look like he's muzzling and keeping the animal from eating, even though he has the right to, even though it's not a problem. And Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai says that don't just put a feed bag in front of it and give it the same type of produce that it's stepping on, because that's part of the din of lo sachsom. When you would do this, to put a feed bag in front of the animal, it has to be the same type of food that it's stepping on. It can't be less. You can't let it step on a quality grain and have it eat a cheap grain. But Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai says, Omer, maybe that put the best, karshinim are the best for it. And that's what you should put in. Maybe because you can say, then there's like a reason why you have a bag. Maybe then it's even less of a problem, because now it's more understandable why there's a food bag in front of it, because he wants it to eat and be strong and have the best grain. Whereas if you would just give it the same type of food that it's stepping on, maybe that could still look like a problem, because he doesn't want the animal to get to that food for some reason. So here at least we see that there's, if the animal is stepping on these, that there's eno over mishum lo sachsom shobedisha. And we have a contradiction from this, from a Bryce of Ramini. It says paros hamarchosois bitavua, the same thing. Paros that are stepping on dried out kernels in order to break them open. He's not over. Not like we said. That's the same. He's not over because that's not where the lav was mentioned. It was mentioned breaks separating the shiboilais from the kernels. Mishumbal tachsum. He's not going to be over on bal tachsum. But dashos bitruma, same thing. If the person, however, if it's doing a dashos bitruma, the meiser over mishumbal tachsum. So here's the kasha, because before we said he's even if it's a dashos doing disha on truma, the meiser, that there's no lav of lo sachsoim. And here we see that there is. This is a brisa that says that there would be a lav of lo sachsoim, bal sachsoim. And then it continues and says, "V'machri hadosh b'parasa shel Yisrael." Let's say a nachri takes the animal of the Yisrael, and even if the Yisrael tells him to take it, he tells him to do disha, muzzle this animal, and do disha with your produce. So there's eno over mishum bal sachsoim. There's not a problem, and that's where the Yisrael told him to take his own animal and to muzzle it and to disha with the goy's animal. We're saying here eno over mishum bal sachsoim. Yisrael hadash b'paraso shel nachri. However, Yisrael that would take the animal of a nachri and would muzzle it, it would be over mishum bal sachsoim. So here we see that there's a kasha, truma al truma, because in the first brisa we saw that it's not over if he's doing disha bit truma, because truma is not really the owner's produce, and therefore there's not a problem of muzzling the animal from eating it. But here in the second brisa we saw that there's no problem of muzzling it when it's doing hamar chosais b'tavua, but there was a problem of muzzling it when it was doing disha on tavua of truma, and that's a kasha on the Mishnah that we had before. So the Gemara says, so kasha truma a truma, kasha meiser a meiser. So the Gemara says that we can be miyashiv the problem bishleim a truma lo kasha. The truma on the truma we can be miyashiv. It's kan be truma, kan be gidule truma. But the case where we saw that it was, meaning in this brisa where it was disha, was a lav of lo sachsom, was when it was gedule truma. If the person took real truma and he replanted it and it grew into new growth, new plants, so that is called gedule truma, and it's really got the din. It's only d'Rabbanan. It's only truma d'Rabbanan. So it's really like chulin, and therefore it's like, just as any regular grain, there's an isra of lo sachsom. So too with this, there would be lo sachsom. That would be the second price. It still has the shem truma on it, but it is like chulin. It's only d'Rabbanan, and therefore there would be a lab of lo sachsom. And truma, the real truma, would be in the first Mishnah that we had just at the top of the Amud, and that would be no problem of lo sachsom, because it's not really the owner's produce, it's the Kohen's produce. So there's not a problem of muzzling the animal when he's doing disha to that. Maybe there is a problem, but he's not going to be over on the lab of bal sachsom. So b'truma we were miyasha, but what about meiser? A meiser kasha, that still would be a kasha, because we don't see that the Chazal said that by gedule truma they called it truma d'Rabbanan, but by gedule meiser, to go and replant meiser, for example, meiser sheni, that's supposed to be eaten in Yerushalayim, and to go replant it and have it, and the new growth, to have it be considered meiser d'Rabbanan, we don't see such a thing. Kash. So more asks, v'chitema meiser nami lo kash. Maybe we should say the same thing by meiser. Let him replant the meiser. Let's say that it works the same way. Let's say that the one is talking about the gedule meiser, and one is talking about real meiser. So kan be meiser, but kan be gedule meiser. More says bishleim gedule truma. No, with truma it worked to say such a thing. The gedule truma. One brisa was talking about. The brisa was talking about gedule truma, and the Mishnah above was talking about, or was a brisa above also was talking about real truma. So that works. Gedule truma is called truma. El gedule ma'aser chulaninu. Gedule ma'aser, if they would replant the produce, which was ma'aser rishon or ma'aser sheni, it would be considered chulin. And he has a brisa. It's none. We learn in a Mishnah in Trumos that this point. Gedule tevel, it says let gedule tevel gedule ma'aser sheni. Chulin says that they're chulin. What does it mean gedule tevel? If someone took tevel, which was supposed to be ma'aser, it's also to eat until it's ma'aser, and they would replant it. All of the new growth that would come from that tevel, they said it's mamish like chulin. That it's like it's not even means that you could eat it bi'arai. That if you were out in the fields and you didn't see the pnei abayis, it wouldn't have become a din tevel. You could still eat it bi'arai. Achilas arai. It turns back into chulin. And so too the gedule that was tevel and ma'aser sheni. And so once it's got the din chulin, for sure, if a person is doing disha with an animal on this type of produce, this is also for him to muzzle the animal. And therefore we have a kasha, because the first brisa said that ma'aser was it was not over if you muzzled truma for ma'aser, and the second brisa said he was over. So to say that the first one is ma'aser sheni, we could understand why it'd be usher, because it's like ma'aser sheni or it's ma'aser rishon, it belongs to the Levi, or even if it's ma'aser sheni. I think the understanding is it's ma'aser rishon, so it's usher, it belongs to the Levi. But the second brisa that said it's not a problem, it's ain't over with ma'aser. Right? The reason why it worked by truma was because we called it in the brisa, we called it truma, and so even though we were calling it truma, it was only durabundant, so you would still be usher to muzzle. But in the first brisa and the second brisa, we called it ma'aser, and we can't say gedule regular ma'aser and gedule ma'aser because the first brisa where it's not going to be over will be real ma'aser, so it's not the owners, and the second brisa where it will be over is when it's really like chulin. But why would we call it ma'aser? Gedule ma'aser is not called ma'aser, so we would never be calling it ma'aser. So we couldn't have that answer that it's going to be over because it's called ma'aser, but it's really like chulin. We wouldn't be able to answer that. So Gemara says, no, it only works by truma. It's called truma. But gedule ma'aser never gets called ma'aser, so we wouldn't be able. That can't be shot in the use of the lashon of ma'aser in the second brisa. So we said on Tzadik Amar Aleph, about from the top down in the Gemara, about 15 lines with Ditanan, and we're bringing a proof that with truma, gedule truma is called truma, and gedule ma'aser is not called ma'aser at all. It's just called chulin, like we already mentioned. Ditanan, we learn in a Mishnah in Trumois, gedule tevel, gedule ma'aser sheni. It's chulin. If you would replant the tevel and you would replant the ma'aser sheni, all it would be called the new growth would only be called chulin. So therefore, that would not work between these two brises because we referred to in the brises as ma'aser, and if it was one of them was gedule ma'aser, would never have been even called ma'aser. Ela lokasha, we still don't have a problem. We can answer it. Haba ma'aser rishon, v'haba ma'aser sheni. Ma'aser rishon, we can say that's where it was not lav of lo sachson shor b'disho, because that was the Levi's, because that was ma'aser rishon. Ma'aser sheni is considered to be the owners. He's supposed to eat it, and there he should not muzzle his animal because it's just like any other produce. He's not allowed to muzzle his animal for. Biboy zema Haba haba Meiser Sheni. We could even learn differently. We could say, but both prices we were referring to, it was talking about Meiser Sheni. Then why would there be a difference in the first price? It would be talking about. It would say that it's not going to be a lav of lo saxum, and in the second price it is a lav. How can it be? So below kasha, it's not a kasha. Ha Rabbi Meir, ha Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Meir, well, they were cholik on how to learn Meiser Sheni, whether it's considered mammon geboa, it's considered of hektishes, or if it's considered the mammon of the person whose Meiser it was originally, mammon hediot. And if we would say it's mammon geboa, then there wouldn't be any lav of lo saxum because it's not the owner's to be allowing his animal to eat it, so there's not a problem so much of muzzling his animal. But if it's his own mammon, so then it's a problem for him to muzzle his animal. Effectively more. Right, and this is the explanation. Ha Rabbi Meir the Omar Meiser Sheni Mammon Gavoa. Is Mammon Gavoa? That would be the first price where it's not a problem to muzzle. Ha Rabbi Yehuda the Omar Meiser Sheni Mammon Hediotu. That would be the second price where it is a problem because it's his own mammon. Therefore, he shouldn't be muzzling his animal when he's doing disha on that type of produce. Hechidami. What are we talking about? What do we mean here? Hechidami. Hechidami. Rashi says where we on the Gemara down about 8-9 lines to the heavy meiser kodim ledisha. How can it be a case that we have it being called meiser and we're doing disha on meiser? We're supposed to. That's before the miruach hakri. The disha is before the final of the gemar malacha, and that's when it's called. That's when it has a chiyuv. You have to meiser it. It gets the shem tevel, and then you have to meiser it. But before, and we're dealing with disha in an earlier stage than that. So how can we have that we're dealing with meiser that's being threshed? Hey vidami. Going, and for the Gemara, we're talking the haktimu b'shibolim. That what happened was you should have waited, but while it was still like in sheaves, he called on it Shem Meiser, like Meiser Rishon or Meiser Sheni, early, and then it was Chal the Shem Meiser on it, and then that's even though he's not supposed to have done it that early. Right, the Gemara. So that's right. Now we said according to Rabbi Yehuda, it's called Mammon Hediot. Meiser Sheni is Mammon Hediot. So that would be the second brisa where it's usher to muzzle. He's over if he muzzles. With Rabbi Yehuda, boy, Chaima, how can you tell me that it's if you would muzzle it now because it's Meiser Sheni, he is going to be over on Lo Saxo. It's called Meiser Sheni still, even if it's Mammon Hediot, it's still Meiser Sheni. It's got Shem Meiser Sheni on it, and it's supposed to be eaten not here. It's supposed to be eaten. It's also to eat it here. You have to take it to Shalim and eat it. So there's a lav of not to eat it here, to take it to Shalim, and what we're seeing is that the lav of lo saxum shobadisho is now taking precedence. And if he would be chaysim, the mouth of this animal, he'd be over on a lav. On that lav. So that means that that lav is pushing off the lav that is supposed to be eaten in the chomos of Yerushalayim, because it's not supposed to even be fed to the animals. So like there's a lav right there. So how come the lav of lo saxum is like overriding the lav of not and we're saying that he's actually being over on that lav. How can he actually be over on the lav of lo saxum when he's over on a different lav of eating it outside of Yerushalayim? Rashi says where we are on the Gemara down about 8-9 lines. Ha boy choyme. It's still supposed to be eaten, even though it's a moment hedir. It's still supposed to be eaten in Yerushalayim. She'asu lo achlo chutz lechoymas Yerushalayim. It's also there's an isser of eating it outside of the walls of Yerushalayim. Vehechi asi love the lo sachsom. How could it be? Therefore, he's over on lo sachsom. It's that means that lo sachsom is pushing away this other love. Love the lo sachsom. V'doche love the lo soichel leachol b'sharecha. That you're not supposed to eat it wherever you are and wherever you live. So that's what's happening. It's pushing one love up. How can it do that? The Gemara answers the reason is that it's really within the walls, because they rebuilt a new wall around the older walls. They built like a newer wall around that, which also more says, Kagon Shadash Lifni Mechoimos Beis Pagi. It was like an outer wall that was built around. Rashi, the next Rashi says, Beis Pagi, Hekif Chitzon Shel Yerushalayim, is the furthest outer wall around Yerushalayim. There was like few walls that were surrounding Yerushalayim completely, like maybe 2 or 3. So Shosifu Olai, but they added on afterwards, Beis Pagi. I guess it was Beis Pagi, and they call Olai, Shosifu Olai, Karuyi Beis Pagi. It was called Beis Pagi. Veneer Li. All right.
This is in the time of the Mishnah or the Gemara that you're talking about this? What's second wall?
Around the Mishnah time when so, and that's what happened. He was eating within those walls, so it was within the walls. So the only issur that was being looked at over here was lo sachsom. That was the other issur wasn't taking place over here because that condition was being fulfilled. In fact, the Gemara is ema lo kasha. We could say another reason why it's not a kasha between the two brises. Lo kasha kan b'meiser vadai, kan b'meiser demai. We could say that one was real meiser. It might be it was real meiser, and therefore that's why it would not be an isser. Here it could be referring to here, we're talking about Meiser Sheni. Rashi says we are on the Gemara down about 15 lines. Kan b'Meiser Demai de delay elam d'Rabbanan. That's only d'Rabbanan. Okay, right. Okay, so the Gemara, back in the Gemara. So we could say that Meiser Vadai is where it was not, and a person wasn't over if he was muzzled his animal, because it wasn't in the walls. It was outside of the walls, and he wasn't over. It was just because.
We moved on to this
So the case where it was Meiser Demai, that's where it would be over, because that's like chulin. It's only a d'Rabbanan, and where it's not going to be over, that's where he's not going to be over. That's where he will not be over on the lav, because it's like maybe that's going to go to Rabbi Meir that it's Mamun Gavoa, and both of these, then all of this would be according to Rabbi Meir. It's Mamun Gavoa, and the Meiser Sheni is Mamun Gavoa, so he wouldn't be over on the lav lo sachson. And the case where the second mission where he was over was when it was only Meiser of Demai, and it's not even it's like chulin because it's only d'Rabbanan, and then it's not supposed to be muzzling his animal for produce like that. But kan b'Meiser Demai. So hashta. To also once we answer an answer like this, that we can be machalik between Meiser Badai and Meiser Demai, we could have done that for Truma. truma nami lokash. So hasha de osis lachi. Once we come on to an answer like this, we could have said the same thing for truma. Truma is not a problem. Nami lokasha. Why? Kan betruma vaday was mamash real truma. Kan betruma demai. It could have just come from a ama arts. Truma demai or maisa demai is when an ama arts has it's a suffix whether he took meiser or not, and somebody buys it from him. You don't know whether he took meiser or not from it. So they were gozer. The Chazal were gozer that when buying from an ama arts that he probably didn't meiser before. There's a good chance. So you have to remeiser it. But it's only a meiser chiyuv d'Rabbanan. So that's what we said by meiser. But we want to say it now by truma. When a person takes truma gedola, he has first he takes like one 1/100th certain amount from a whole pile for the kohen, and then they take meiser rishon after that. So we want to say that the truma, real truma is where it person if he was doing disha on real truma and he muzzled his animal, there wouldn't be a problem because it was the kohen's. And truma of the maiman is somebody bought truma from a amaretz that is probably this Cree probably never had the truma taken off of it. The produce from an amaretz. So then he would have to take the midrabanan like truma gedola midrabanan. And therefore, we could say that that's almost like chulin also. It's only d'Rabbanan. So therefore, if he was doing disha on type of a produce like that, he would not be over on lo sachsom. We could say the same thing.
So he bought it in the ear.
He bought it from a Amaretz.
Before it was threshed.
He bought it, right, because he wants to do the threshing now. Right, he's trying to do the threshing now. So bishlema, no. Meiser, we could say this by Meiser. We can't say this by Truma. Bishlema Meiser Demai Ika. There is such a thing as Meiser Demai. That all of Demai is suffix Meiser. That's the only way we see it. We see it by Meiser. But we don't see Truma Demai. And the Truma Demai Mi Ika, there doesn't exist Truma Demai. Because when Ezra came, that time we learn it, we'll see what it says. That time we learn in the Brisa, Af hu bittul es havidui, begozer ala demai. Right. So Ezra came, and the Levium didn't come up with Nehemiah. So Ezra wanted all of these types of people, the Kahanim and Levium, to come so they could help with the Beis Hamikdash. They didn't come. So he was Mavat. He took it away from. He took the Meiser Rishon away from the Levium and gave it to the Kahanim as a kanas. And there's a video that you're supposed to say on the 4th and 7th year of the Shemitah cycle when they're doing biur Meiser from their house. Sometimes people keep their Meiser in their house for a long time and then they give it later. So there's on the 4th and 7th year, you're supposed to biur the Akadosh min habayis. You're supposed to get rid of all of that and give it to whoever you're supposed to give it to, if it's to the Kohen or to the Levi. And at that time, you're supposed to say a vidui, a lashon. It says, I've given everything to the Kohen and I've given everything to the Levim. So when Ezra was mavatal from giving the Truma, the Meiser Rishon to the Levim, you could not say the vidui anymore because the lashon of the vidui is I gave my portion to the Levim. You couldn't say that anymore. So Ezra was mavatal the vidui, and then he at the same time he's also gozer on demai, but he sent shluchim all over the country to see what. Lagabi Demai, what you can rely on and what you can't. We saw that the Amoratzim, they weren't taking Meiser, but they were taking Truma, because Truma is a curry, so it's more Chomer. So they saw they were taking that. So he wasn't Gozer Demai on Truma in the first place. One Daf Tzadi Aleph, a little bit down from the midpoint of the Amud. So it says Ad Demai. He sent all over Eretz Israel to see what was really taking place. The only thing that they were mafrish, the Amaratzim, was Truma Gedola. So he didn't make a demai on Truma Bilvad. They were only mafrish Truma Gedola Bilvad, and not Meiser. So he was geyser on demai that if someone would buy from an Amaras, he would have to take Meiser D'Rabbanan, but not he wouldn't have to take Truma Gedolah Midrabanan. So they can't say that the same answer that we gave, one is Meiser Vadai and one is Meiser Demai. We can't say that with Truma. One is Truma Vadai and one is Truma Demai, because it doesn't exist, Truma Demai. Look, Asher, we don't have a problem. Kam Truma Meiser, Trumas Meiser. Vadai v'kam Trumas Meiser Demai. No. We could say when we said in the two brises, it was Lashon was Trumas Meiser. So we could say it was Trumas Meiser. Actually, the Lashon of the Mishnah was Truma V'Meiser. But here we want to say it's not a problem. We could say Kan, Trumas Meiser Vadai, and Kan Trumas Meiser Demai. That, in other words, the way they want to answer is that the Lashon of Truma means that we could be referring to the Trumas Meiser, not Truma, real Truma. We could just be answering that the Lashon Truma, and between the two brises, when it's Trumas Meiser, then there is Demai, and that's Trumas Meiser is what the Levi, after he gets his Meiser Rishon, he takes Truma Mina Truma. He got his Truma Rishon, which is 1/10 of what is left after the Truma Gedolah is taken. His Meiser Rishon is 1/10 of what's left of the whole pile after the Truma for the Truma Gedolah is taken out and given to the Kohen. And then the Levi takes from now what he has, that 10th that he just received, he takes 1/10 of that. That's called Trumas Meiser, and he gives that to the Kohen. So we could say over here that the Lashon Truma V'Meiser, that it's referring to Trumas Meiser, which is, there was Demai on that, and therefore we could have an answer on the Truma. Practically boy mine mirav sheishis. Haisa oicheles umitrezis. Mao. We're going back to the lab of Lo Sachsom Shobadisho. What happens if the wheat kernels cause shilshul? So what happens if the animal has shilshul, and the wheat kernels that he would eat if he was not muzzled would be bad for his stomach? So is it also there to muzzle the animal when it would hurt him when he's sick at the time when he's sick? Mao, what's the din? What's the suffix? Mishum dimale lahu v'halo male law. What's the isur lo sachsom shod b'disho? Because it's good for him to be able to eat, and here it's not good for him because he's sick. So therefore, there wouldn't be any lav lo sachsom shod b'disho. Or dilma techazia mitzdaira. Or maybe the whole lav of lo sachsom shod b'disho is because he'll see it and he'll want to eat it. He'll be hungry to eat it. So therefore, in that case, even if he was sick, he'll still see it and want to eat it, and that should be the issur should still apply. That was the suffix of the Gemara. Omar Lahu Rav Sheshis Tanisua. We learned it in a brisa. Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai Omer. Maybe Kashina v'toila law shakashina yafos law minakol. We saw above in the first brisa, Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai said that in the bag that you should put around its neck for him to eat, the feed bag, you should put kashina because that's the best food for it. So from there we see Shma Mina Mishum Dumale Lo. We see who? Shma Mina. We see that that's the answer. That what's the lav of Lo Sachsom Shobadisho? Because it's good for the animal to be able to eat. It's good. It helps him. It's good for him. So therefore, when it's not good for him, there won't be any lav of Lo Sachsom Shobadisho. So therefore, if the animal is sick and the wheat kernels would hurt his stomach, it's not a problem to muzzle him, to keep him from eating. Iboilahu, Mao Shioma Odom Linochri, Chosum Parasai V'Doshbo. Take my para and dosh and thresh your produce with my and muzzle my animal and thresh your produce. So mi amrin, do we say ki amrinin amira lenachri shvus? Do we say that telling a goy to do an isser? It's an isser d'rabbanan. It's hani mili le'inyan Shabbos. It's only by Shabbos to tell. That's where it's usher to tell a goy to do an isser for The Isser Skila, because Shabbos, Malachos of Shabbos is in Isser Skila. It's Misa. It's Misa's based in. Aval Chasima to Isser Lav, lo. But just the Lav of Lo Sachsoim Shobet Isser is a Lav. And if a person does it, but Mezid and with Hasra, he gets Malchus. It's not Misa. So maybe there, since it's not its Chomer, so maybe there would not be a problem of Amir La'akum in the case to tell him to do with that type of an Isser. Oh, well, maybe Lo Shano, maybe there's no difference. Doesn't matter what the onish is in the Isser. It's always Aser, Durabanan. There's always a Shvus, an Isser Durabanan, to tell an Akum to do an Isser. Bring Rayas, Tashma. What's the answer? Nachri Hadash B'Paraso Shel Yisrael. There's a brisa that says if a Nachri would take a para of a Yisrael and he would do disha with it, and so ain't over. He himself is not over. Mishum Bal Sachsom. We see he's not over when he does his disha on his own produce with the Yisrael's animal. It's not over. So the Gemara is medayik from that brayse. It says ma'averhu delo over. He himself is not over on the isser. It doesn't mean that there's no isser here. It's just not over on it. Ha isura ika. That means that someone was over. Someone did an isser. The Yisrael did an isser. The Yisrael's animal mashma, but he's not over on it. So isser ika. The Gemara says really. So that would tell us that there isn't. That would tell us that there is an isser of amir lenachri, even in the case of lo sachsom. If it's still an isser, that means the one who told him to do it was over on an isser. The Gemara says, "B'din hu de usur nami leika." Really, there's not even any isser, so we can't really. We want to now say that we can't bring a proof that amir lenachri in the case in a stam lab is also an isser d'Rabbanan. There's no isser either. Why? But I did the Tana Sefer. If you look in the Sefer, the Yisrael Hadash B'Paraso Shel Nachri, that the Sefer spoke about a Yisrael that would take the goy's animal and do disha. He's over. He's over on the lav of those sachsom. So therefore, that's why they mentioned in the Reisha the lashon over that he's over. But it doesn't mean that when it says he's not over, doesn't mean that there's any isser. Just that we wanted it to be symmetrical format to the Sefer. So Tana Reisha, so they also to the Reisha. So Tana Reisha ain't over. So therefore, that's since the Sefer said that if Yid would do disha with the goy's animal, he would be over. So they said in the Reisha also that if a goy would do disha, he's not over. But it doesn't mean that there was an isser. Ain't over. And if we would say like this, that means there's no isser d'Rabbanan even in the lav lo sachsom to tell a nachri to do a lo sachsom with one's animal. Tashma tisholchu le'avu Shmuel. They sent to Abu Shmuel, the father of Shmuel, Halan Turai, these oxen, the Ganvin Amurai, that they were certain goyim stole. Uminagchin ison, and they sterilized them. They were mastries them. So what happened? What's the din? What's the din? Really, for a yid to be mastries an animal is usher. It's an isser. What happened was they would arrange with the goyim to steal them, be mastries them, and then give them back. So it wasn't they were stolen. So they didn't do it. The din is, the shayla is, what's the din? Is this possible to do? So sholach lehu harama is abidbu. That was he did a trick in order to just have them sterilized, since the yid himself couldn't do it. Why? Because when they were sterilized, they could plow much better. They were more strong. They were stronger. They could plow better. That's why they would want to sterilize them. So he told them it's a trick, and it's not. You can't do tricks that in order to get around halacha. A loophole is abid bahu. Arimu alayhu yizdavnun. So we should do a trick to the person the yid who sold it, who had the guy steal it from him, and make that he has to sell the animal. He can't use it. He can't have the benefit of it. He went to the right. Omar Papa, Bnei Morava, Sovereign Law. In the Eretz Israel, they thought Gabi this Shaila, Kirebi Chidka. They thought that the din should be like Reb Chidka to Omar Bnei Noach Mitzavin ala Srisus. He held that the goyim are also they have a lav not to be mastrous animals, sterilized animals. The kovre, and therefore what happened was really that when the yid told the goy, spoke out to the goy that it should be stolen, he was being machshir the goy because the goy himself had the alav not to do this, and therefore that was the kanas. So the kovre, and what the yid was really over on was lifnei iver lo siten michshal. Rashi opposite will be on the Gemara. Mishum lifnei iver lo siten michshal aval bedover she'ein hanachri muzar, and therefore, Rav Papa was saying this. If we would learn like this, like Reb Chidka, that would mean that if it was something where the guy didn't have a lab for himself, wasn't muzhar about, and it was only a lab, then a yid would be able to tell the guy to do that issa. It would have been coming out that over here the only reason it's a problem is because the yid is being machshil the guy in something that's also for the guy.
In that case, why would they have to do the ruse of selling, of having him steal it? If it's permitted, then they wouldn't have to do that. They could just have a non-Jew castrate.
No, because it's us. No, because it's us for a yid to do it.
Right, but if it's okay for a yid to tell a non-Jew to do it, then they wouldn't have to do the ruse of stealing. They just say do it to the non-Jew. Why did they have the ruse? Why did they get the non-Jew to steal?
I hear what you're saying. So according to this, they want to say it was only because of lifnei iver lo sitin mishra about bedover she'ein anachri musar olav ein malach shai. I might say that it's muter. So that's what Rav Papa thought. They thought to say like that, and if they would say like that, then you're right. You could just you could have a guy could. No, you can't. You can't. If a yid is usher, then he's doing it for the yid. That's like the yid doing it himself.
Right, but if we say that it's not usher for a yid to ask a goy to do something that's forbidden for the yid, then the yid could simply say to the goy, "Take this bull and castrate it and give it back to you."
I couldn't do that. No.
Why not?
Because it would have to be that the goy steals it and is doing it like on his own accord, not because the yid right. You still have to have that it wasn't the yid telling him to do it for himself. It's just that when it's also for the goy, the whole discussion of hey, you steal it and then give it back to me is different than lo sachsom. It's lifnei iver, lo sachsom michshal, and so it's just that if they wasn't also for the goy, then they could have said, "And you steal it and give it back to me." But you couldn't do it straight out because then it would be for the yid, and it's also for a yid. But before that was in Eretz Israel, they thought like that. But before that, they said that it's stam harama, and there's a knas for whoever did it, and they forcing the yid to sell the animal and never use it for having done such a trick. That he who thought he was going to go to the effort of having a guy steal it and give it back and then he masters it so he could have a stronger ox for plowing, he went through a lot of efforts. So the knas is we're not going to let him have any hanor from that animal. You have to sell it. The Gemara says, so originally, so Sova Rava, Lemema yim karu l'shchita, right? So once we saw that he has to sell it, so Rava thought that the sell it as shchita. Because if we're knasing the yid, we don't want him to be able to sell it for radia, for plowing. Then he'll benefit from having done this trick, because he'll now be able to sell it for more money because it strengthened the ox for plowing. Rava thought that when we're giving him a kanas, that we should even kanas him on as to how for what he's selling it as, just for shchita. Then he wouldn't benefit from the fact that it was sterilized. Omar Abaye Dayan shekanasta aleihim mechira. No, it's enough that you forced him to just sell it because he went through this effort in order to be able to use it as for plowing, and you're not even letting him use the animal at all. You're forcing him to get rid of the animal. That alone is enough of a kanas. Now he has to go buy more animals. More says pshita. The following is pshita. Pshita b'no gadol. So the Rashi explains that when they sell it, they have to sell it to somebody else, an acher. More says that it's pashut that it's mutar to sell it to an older son. When he goes to sell it, he can sell it to an older son. Pshita gadol ki acher dami. That's okay to sell it to an older son. Rashi, we're reading on the Gemara down 3 lines. Ki acher dami. That should be okay. Vadai imachro. For some reason, it's a vadai clear that shouldn't be a problem because he is selling it, and he's selling. And a gadol, he's a gadol. And it doesn't say anywhere you can't sell it to your own family. So you could be. It's enough of a kanas. What about a cotton that's still samach on the shulchan of the father? A cotton. B'no cotton, what will be the din? Rab Achai Osa v'Rab Ashi Shari. Rab Achai says you cannot. Rab Ashi says that you cannot sell to a small child that's still living by the father. It's still like the father. It's like selling it to himself. And Rab Ashi says you can do it. Mrema v'Marazutro Omre law, meaning that Rab Ashi was very makel, allowing to sell it back. It's like selling it to himself. And here we see another akula that Merema and Marzutra the Omrei law Haneu Trei Chasidai Michal Feadode, that they switched animals. They had their 2 animals. They had a goy steal it and mastress it and give it back to them, and then they had to have a kanas, and they exchanged animals between each other, and that was the end of it. I guess they were makel in that way. Boy Rami Barchama, Hoshiv law kites b'piyamau. Let's say a person puts a thorn in the animal. He doesn't muzzle the animal, but he puts he fixes a thorn in the animal's mouth somehow. That every time he bites down, it hurts him because the thorn. Mau. One says, Hoshiv law chasima mal yosahi. That's just like muzzling the mouth, because your mamish doing something that prevents him from being able to eat. That's the lav of lo sachsom. Ella, that's not the shaila. The shaila was yoshab lo kites b'piyah mouth. What happens if a coat just comes into the mouth? Is there a mitzvah to take it out of its mouth because of the lav of lo sachsom shor? And this thorn that came into the mouth by itself, it's preventing him from eating. Is there a mitzvah therefore to take it out of his mouth? The Gemara continues to ask, a robitz lo ari b'chutz mao. If the owner took a ari, and put it outside near where the animal was walking around doing the threshing, is that considered chasima, putting a muzzle on, because the animal can't eat because it's too scared. It's just running around the round and around threshing mill, but it can't eat because it doesn't have a mind to eat. And is that called being muzzling or not? So rovat's law chasima mal yosahi. That's just like putting a real muzzle on the animal. That's the lav lo sachsom if one would do it for that intention. Ella, that's not what we meant. That's not what the shaila was. Rovat's law ari mibachutz mao. What if it was there by itself? And I guess the shaila is there. I guess is there an Indian to like take it, make it go away or something? So and it continues. What about taking the baby of the cow and putting it outside? So is that going to be? It'll be interested in its own baby, so maybe it won't eat as much. Or what about tsama lemayamau? What if you like you? Is it a mitzvah to give it to drink so that it can eat some? Because by being so thirsty, it won't eat anything. It won't want to eat. What about paras lo katvole al gabi dishamau? To take it's stomping on the kernels and on the sheaves. What about to cover it with like some type of a leather so that it can't see what it's crushing, but it's still able to crush it. As it walks, it still crushes it, but it just can't see it. Is that considered lo sachsom? No. So the Gemara says, Poshut Maha. We can be Poshut the answer from here. Choda Maha Choda. From the following verse, we can at least be Poshut one of these shilas. The time we learn, Rashai Bal Para Lahariv Paroso Kadesh Tochal Mina Adisha Abe. Let's say a person is renting out his para to do disha for a balabayas. He's allowed to starve it a little bit before it goes to work, so it can eat a lot while it's working, and he can get a free meal for it. He's allowed to do that. The Rashai Balabais, and the Balabais that is working the animal on his mill, Lahatir Pakia Amir Lifnei Abehema Kidei Shelo Tochal Min Adisha Arbe. He can throw down like a certain type of straw over what he wants to have threshed, and then the animal won't see it so much what's underneath it, but it'll still be crushing it, and he's allowed to do that. He'll eat the straw also. And the Gemara says, so therefore they thought that this was a raya that it's mutter to put the spread forest law kat vole al gabi disha. They thought that this was going to be an answer for that by the spreading the straw that it couldn't see it. It was similar to that. The Gemara says it's not similar because it can still eat as it's eating the straw. It can still eat some of the grain that it's doing disha on, and that's why that could be mutter, and it won't give us an answer to the case where he completely covers the grain with a piece of leather. Shani also he is still eating, and he could still eat a few pieces of grain. Like the Ibo is Ema, you could say Rashai Balabayas Lahatir Pakia Amir Lifnei Behema Miakara. They said, or you could answer that what the Brisa was talking about was that it's permitted for the Balabayas to take this leather and place it over the grain. Oh no, we're talking about the straw, throwing straw over the grain. Miakara, Kidei Shelo Tochal Arbe Min Adisha. Meaning before it starts doing the disha, you take straw and you feed it well, so that when it goes to work, it won't eat all the produce that it's working with. So that's mutter. Boy Mine, they asked Rabbi Yonasan Mirebi Simai Chasima B'Bechutz. What about if it says lo sachsim shor b'disho, as it's doing the disha, don't put a muzzle on it. But what about if the person put a muzzle and then led it over to the work and led it to the disha? What's the din? Is that mutter because it's not during the time of the disha? It's just before. It's beforehand. So Mao shor b'disho omar rachmana. Does the Torah says it has? Is it only an iser shor at the time when it's doing the disha that is not supposed to be muzzled? And this is not b'shas the disha because it's before. Or is the lav of the Torah don't do threshing with a muzzled animal, and then this would be still the lav. Omar Achwana. We can learn. Rabbi Yonasan was asking from Rabbi Simai. Rabbi Simai told him, from your house of your father, we can have the answer. He was a Kohen. Atolomad. The pasuk says, "Yayin v'sheichar lo tishte ato v'necho Itcha b'viaschem. When you come into the base of Mikdash to do your avoda, don't be drunk, don't drink. So is it mashma that just when you come in, when you're in there, in your coming, you shouldn't be drinking, you shouldn't be drunk? So the more explains, b'viaschem hu de'asa. In the coming in to the base of Mikdash, it's also to be drunk and coming. Mishte b'mayil shari. But we can learn from here that if they drank before going to the Vod in the base of Mikdash, that would be okay because they did all the drinking before they coming to the base of Mikdash. But the Gemara says no, because right after that, samach to that, it says the reason why they shouldn't be drinking in their biaschem is because you have to separate between Kodesh v'chol, between doing stam work and doing work for the Beis HaMikdash. And the problem with that is that if they would drink beforehand and then come into the Beis HaMikdash, there wouldn't be mavdil, any difference between chol work and Kodesh work because they're anyway drunk when they're doing the work in the Beis HaMikdash. Lahavdil ben akodesh ben achol omar achmano. And that's the problem. It wouldn't make any difference. It wouldn't have that distinction if they would drink first and then go into the Beis HaMikdash. So they learn from that it means no, you can't even drink beforehand. Elamah Hasam just is there. Bishas bia lo tie shechrus. At the time when you're coming, just don't be drunk. Doesn't mean don't drink as you're coming. Just don't be drunk as you're coming. So too, don't be muzzled as it's doing disha. So hochanami b'shas disha lo tie chasima. That's therefore we learn at the time of the disha he shouldn't be muzzled, and that's where that answers that shaila at least. And we'll stop here.